Hello, and welcome to a brief presentation on the state and national registers of historic places and the proposed Yaphank Main Street Historic District. My name is Jennifer Betsworth, and I'm a Historic Preservation Program Analyst with the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. The New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation provides safe and enjoyable recreational and educational opportunities for all New Yorkers and visitors, and is the steward of valuable natural, historic, and cultural resources. It is also the only state agency charged with advancing historic preservation efforts across New York. The Division for Historic Preservation of the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, also known as the New York State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, offers programs that help individuals and communities achieve the social, economic, and environmental benefits associated with historic preservation. SHPO staff helps identify historic places through cultural resource surveys, provides technical assistance, grants, and incentives, protects historic resources under preservation laws, and collaborates with communities and organizations to help achieve local preservation goals. Established by the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, the National Register of Historic Places is the official list of historic properties that have been recognized as significant in American history, architecture, archaeology, engineering, or culture. The New York State Register was established in 1980. The National Historic Preservation Act of 1966 was passed to acknowledge the value of resources important to our nation's heritage and help protect them from state and federal development projects. The act was spurred by major urban renewal projects which resulted in the wholesale destruction of neighborhoods, such as the demolition of 98 acres in the heart of the city of Albany to create the Empire State Plaza. These projects often disproportionately affected communities of color and immigrants. The act, which grew from the grassroots work of preservationists, created a way to formally honor and protect historic resources and give communities a voice in projects that affected them and the built environment. The New York State Historic Preservation Act, which is modeled after the federal law, passed in 1980. State and federal agencies that fund, license, or approve projects must consult with the SHPO to determine if historic or cultural resources will be affected by the proposed activity. Historic Preservation Environmental Review ensures that properties that are listed or eligible for listing on the registers are considered, and adverse impacts are avoided or mitigated during the project planning process. New York State leads the nation in listing on the registers, with over 6,000 sites designated. Suffolk County has 327 listings, including 51 districts, representing thousands of historic resources. What types of resources can be listed on the National Register? Buildings, structures, objects, sites, and historic districts. How is eligibility determined? It essentially comes down to a pretty simple formula. Significance, or the history of the property, plus integrity, does it look like it did historically, equals eligibility. The National Register program uses 4 criteria to evaluate the significance of a property for listing. A property could be significant for its association with important events, significant people, its architecture or design, or for its archaeology. National Register listed buildings include everything from architectural masterpieces like the Guggenheim to the Big Duck. National Register listed resources nearby include the Swan River Schoolhouse in East Patchogue, Tesla's Wardenclyffe in Shoreham, the William Floyd Estate in Mastic Beach, and the Suffolk County Almshouse Barn on the other side of 495 in Yaphank. There are also lots of churches and farmsteads. Nearby state and National Register listed historic districts include the Greenport Historic District and the Miller Place Historic District. What the National Register is: a collaboration between the property owner or project sponsor and the New York State Historic Preservation Office. Designation is honorific. A gateway to access the 20% federal commercial historic rehabilitation tax credit. A gateway for nonprofits and municipalities to apply for New York State Historic Preservation grants. Other grants, also requiring listing, may be available through other public and private sources. An important land use management tool to assist local governments in decision-making regarding the built environment, and a tool to help promote appreciation for historic resources. What the National Register is not. It does not restrict a property owner's ability to remodel, alter, paint, manage, subdivide, sell, or even demolish a National Register listed building if they use their own funds. National Register designation helps protect a property from government action, not from its owner. It is not a local historic district and does not require any additional level of project review by the local preservation board if one exists. If a private owner uses state or federal funding, like a tax credit, or if a state or federal permit is required, proposed alterations to National Register listed and National Register eligible the state and national registers versus local landmarking. They are separate programs with different implications. The state and national registers were created out of state and federal preservation law, are primarily honorary, have no restrictions for private property owners using private funds. They don't protect a historic property from its owner. They offer a measure of protection from projects that have state or federal funding, licensing, or permitting, and make historic tax credit programs and grant programs available. Local landmarking is created at the local level by the municipality and is part of local government and has a regulatory role like building and zoning. Each municipality has its own ordinance, so powers vary. They typically review exterior changes to individual landmarks and buildings within local historic districts. There's greater controls over demolition, new construction, etc. More restrictions on individual property owners, but more protection for neighborhood character. And sometimes there are local incentives. What is a historic district? A historic district is a group of buildings, structures, and sites that are significant for their historical and physical relationships to each other. Properties and districts are not usually significant individually, but gain meaning from their proximity and association as a collection. A district may include any number of properties. It can be an entire municipality, a neighborhood, an area of related development, a complex of buildings, etc. National Register boundaries. In addition to establishing the significance and integrity of a property, the physical location and extent of the property or district are defined as part of the documentation. Determination of boundaries is a judgment based on the nature of the property's significance, physical and architectural integrity, and physical setting. They're developed during the research stage and confirmed through field examination. Here are the boundaries for the Yaphank Main Street Historic District. Yaphank's historic resources reflect the community's 18th century history of water mills. Mills became the driving force behind the hamlet's economy for nearly 2 centuries. Its smaller-scaled homes spread out along Main Street illustrate the growth of the rural community between the 18th and 20th centuries. As the mill industry dwindled during the late 19th century, Yaphank's enterprising residents recast the hamlet as a picturesque destination for recreation and tourism. The Yaphank Main Street Historic District contains 140 historic resources, primarily residences, but also cemeteries, churches, commercial buildings, a park, and 2 lakes created by historic mill dams of the Carmens River. The historic period begins circa 1726 and continues through the mid-20th century. The National Register draft for the Yaphank Main Street Historic District will soon be available to read on our website. You can find it at the link listed on this slide. Frequently asked questions. Does this mean I won't be able to make changes to my home or building? Simply put, no. The National Register does not restrict what private property owners can do to their properties. In fact, as long as state or federal funding or permits are not being used, a property owner can demolish a building that is listed in the National Register. Protection only exists when state and/or federal money and/or permitting is involved in a project. The most common such occurrence is when a Department of Transportation is reconstructing or widening a roadway. If you choose to take advantage of the tax credit programs, the State Historic Preservation Office will have to review your proposed work. If you do not choose to utilize this financial incentive, the state does not review changes to your property. Must owners of listed buildings open their buildings to the public? No, there is absolutely no requirement to open register-listed properties to the public. Can an owner object to having his or her property listed on the registers? Yes. For properties with multiple owners, such as districts, objections only count toward the listing of the district as a whole. No one owner can exempt himself or herself from listing in a district by means of an objection. If a majority of property owners object, a district will not go forward. It is the policy of the SHPO to avoid listings with significant objections and to work with nomination sponsors and communities to provide information and education about the register's program. Owners who wish to object must provide a written, notarized objection to the SHPO prior to the State Review Board meeting on September 10, 2020. Will a property owner be able to leave his property to his children or anyone else that he or she wishes? Yes. Listing on the registers in no way affects the transfer of property from one owner to another. Will listing on the state and national registers, either individually or in a historic district, affect local property taxes or zoning? No. Listing has no direct bearing on any of these local actions. 20% commercial rehabilitation tax credit. Owners of income-producing properties, such as commercial or apartment buildings, can take advantage of the federal Rehab Tax Credit Program. It provides tax credits worth 20% of qualified rehabilitation expenditures. The work performed must meet federal preservation standards as established by the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation and be approved by the National Park Service. SHPO staff review projects and work with property owners to determine the best approaches for rehabilitation objectives. In general, projects should strive to retain and repair original historic materials. Comprehensive information about the program is best found at the National Park Service website, which is listed on this slide. Please contact your SHPO representative for further guidance. Thank you for watching this presentation. If you have any further questions about the Yaphank Main Street Historic District or the National Register Program, please reach out to me, Jennifer Betzworth, at jennifer.betzworth@parks.ny.gov. Thanks, and have a great day.